Director Williams, on March 30th of this year, the state of Wyoming filed a petition for judicial review in the Wyoming District Court that alleges that the Department of Interior has failed to meet the 12-month deadline for determining Wyoming's petition to delist the grizzly bear population in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Wyoming's petition to delist was submitted in January of 2022, so it's now been 2.5 years, and it was submitted to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, requesting the agency to delist the GYE grizzly bear. This request came after the population was determined to be sufficiently recovered in the Yellowstone ecosystem under the Endangered Species Act. I spoke to you about this a year ago, and you emphasized that the service needed to complete its scientific review, which was supposed to be done within a 12-month period. Here we are 1 year later, and you've had plenty of time to finish the review, but we haven't heard from you yet. Director Williams, when will we see this review?
Congressman Hageman, I do not have a specific date for the review. We are working diligently.
Why is it taking so long?
It is taking long because, as you have noted, under the Endangered Species Act, in determining whether to list or delist a species, there's a 5-factor analysis.
Well, I understand the 5 factors. I'm very familiar with the 5 factors. And in fact, that's part of what my confusion is, because the greater Yellowstone grizzly population has been fully recovered for over 2 decades. And in fact, according to the Fish and Wildlife Service, we have more than double the number of grizzly bears that are considered a recovered grizzly bear population. And Wyoming's management plan has already been determined to be an adequate regulatory mechanism for protecting a recovered species. So again, I'm still confused as to why 2.5 years later, after our petition was filed, we still do not have that review finalized.
Congresswoman Hageman, that determination, as you know, is numbers are very important.
By the statute, you have 12 months. Right? You have 12 months to finish the review, correct?
That's correct.
And you've exceeded that by 2.5 times, correct?
That's correct.
When do you think we can see that? When will we see that review? What will you commit to here today?
I will commit to continuing to work on that review expeditiously. Congresswoman Hageman,
how much longer do you think you're going to need?
There are a number of other litigation and activities before the Fish and Wildlife Service regarding grizzly bears, including a petition, actually a litigation and proposed settlement from Idaho.
After this hearing, could you provide me with a response, an actual response of when you estimate to have that review finalized? Will you provide that information in writing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Congresswoman.
Administrator Spinrad, I want to ask you about a couple of letters that have been sent to you, one by Mike Lee on March 12th of this year, and another one by me on April 19th, related to that highlight NOAA's use of the Billions Project data set, which tracks the information related to climate and natural disasters that allegedly resulted in at least $1 billion in damages since 1980. Have you reviewed either of those letters?
We are reviewing those letters.
Have you personally reviewed either of those letters?
I have read the letters, and my staff is working with me to provide responses.
When do you think you'll have responses to those letters?
I can't give you a specific date.
Okay. Mr. Spinrad, as you know, the data used to monitor the billion-dollar disasters does not distinguish between climate and weather-related disasters and other disaster losses. In fact, the Billions Project does not utilize climate data at all. It simply highlights losses from disasters that allegedly cost over $1 billion in economic impact and damages. NOAA has reportedly failed to disclose its method for calculating disaster loss, as well as information pertaining to sources it uses to calculate losses related to climate change and using the Billions Project data. On NOAA's frequently asked questions page about the Billions Project, it claims that it uses, quote, more than 12 public and private sector data sources to help capture the total direct costs, both insured and uninsured, of the weather and climate events. But the project does not identify these sources in relation to specific events. I want to make sure that we receive responses to our letters so that we can actually understand from NOAA what the data set is that you're using. Does NOAA have its own method of calculating disaster losses?
Yes, we look at the information that we get from the communities. We use our reassessments that we do after every weather event as part of that data
And you will
source.
provide that in response to
We
my
will
pleas
yes.
and my letter? Okay, with unanimous consent, I would like to submit 2 documents for the record. One is a protect the public trust request for investigation into apparent scientific integrity violations related to NOAA's billion-dollar disaster project. And the second one is corrupted climate stations, which documents that 96% of the data that is being used by NOAA to calculate its so-called climate change and global warming are corrupted. I'd like to submit both of those for the record. Thank you. With that, I yield back.